The Chosen Season 6 opens with a storm that's been building for years, a storm that will shatter loyalties, expose betrayal, and change the lives of every disciple forever. As Jesus takes his final steps toward Jerusalem, the air is thick with fear, secrecy, and whispers of death. The Sanhedrin is no longer hiding in the shadows. Rome watches with cold suspicion. And among the disciples, something sacred is breaking. Season 6, Episode 1 isn't just another chapter, it's the beginning of the end. And the decisions made in this single episode will echo through all of eternity. Asterisk, just a travel sequence sits a collision course. Every mile closer to the city tightens the grip of fate around Jesus and his followers. The tension is unbearable, not just because of what's coming, but because of who's watching. The disciples are more divided than they've ever been. Some feel power-stirring, others feel dread. Thomas wrestles with doubt like never before, while Matthew's silence speaks volumes. Even Peter, the rock, begins to crack as he senses the darkness creeping closer. And then there's Judas. He's quieter now, more calculating. He still walks beside Jesus, but his heart is somewhere else and he knows it. There's something brewing inside him, something cold, something that makes him flinch when Jesus looks him in the eye. But Jesus, he knows. He always knows. And yet he says nothing. That silence is deafening. Meanwhile, word spreads. In the streets, in the temple courts, in backroom chambers, the name Yeshua is being spoken with both reverence and rage. The Pharisees can feel the people slipping through their fingers. The Sadducees want blood. And Rome, they want control. Pontius Pilate, distant but watchful, begins receiving whispers from Judea, warnings of a prophet who stirs crowds to ice. For the first time, the world powers agree on something. This man is dangerous. But still, Jesus moves forward. He walks not with fear, but with focus. And those around him, they begin to understand this is not a road that leads to glory. It's a road that leads to sacrifice. But even in this storm of political and spiritual chaos, Jesus offers moments of breathtaking peace. A meal shared by firelight, a hand on a shoulder, a knowing glance that says, I see your fear and I still choose you. This is what makes Season 6 so powerful. It doesn't just show the external threats, it shows the internal collapse. The doubt, the pressure, the unbearable weight of being chosen. The disciples begin to feel it pressing on them, each in their own way. The miracles are fewer now. The danger is louder. And still, they follow. But the most haunting part of Episode 1? It's not what's said, it's what's not said. The silence between Jesus and Judas. The pauses in Peter's voice. The way Mary's hands tremble as she prepares a simple meal. Everyone feels it, they just can't name it. Not yet, but it's coming. And when it arrives, it will split their lives in two before this moment and after. Asterisk, while Jesus walks boldly toward his destiny, the darkness begins to move in silence. In hidden chambers beneath the temple, torches flicker as the Sanhedrin meets in secret. Their faces are drawn, not just with hatred, but with fear. Caiaphas knows the people are watching, and the name of Jesus has become too loud to ignore. Every healing, every teaching, every whisper of Messiah has made him a threat not just to religion, but to control. The priests speak in hushed tones about arrest, about traps, about turning one of his own against him. And that's where Judas steps into the frame, not as a traitor, yet, but as a question mark. His heart is pulled between two worlds, the fire of revolution he once dreamed of and the quiet, relentless love of the man he still follows. But that love now feels dangerous. Every word Jesus speaks cuts deeper. Every parable carries a warning. Judas is beginning to realize this isn't going the way he imagined. There will be no throne, no rebellion, no Roman defeat. There will only be surrender. And Judas, he's not ready to surrender anything. Back among the disciples, unease grows like a shadow that no one can name. They feel the world shifting. Crowds that once cheered now fall silent. Children who used to run to Jesus now cling to their mothers. Even the air feels different, thicker, heavier. Something is coming. Simon the Zealot sharpens his dagger more often now, his eyes always scanning the horizon. Andrew begins praying out loud in the night. And Peter starts asking questions he never dared ask before. What happens when we get there? What if they don't listen? What if this ends badly? But Jesus doesn't offer comfort. He offers truth. Hard, piercing truth. The Son of Man must suffer, he says, and the words fall like stones in the silence. The disciples want to argue, to beg him to stop, to turn back, but something in his eyes tells them it's already too late. The road to Jerusalem has only one end. Meanwhile, Mary Magdalene sees what others miss. Her eyes, once clouded by torment, now see pain even before it arrives. She watches Jesus like a sister watches a brother heading into battle. Every gesture he makes, every moment of rest, every quiet prayer, she knows he's preparing to say goodbye, and still, she stays. Still, she believes. But belief doesn't make it easier. It just makes the heartbreak deeper. And as they approach the edge of the city, where palms will soon be raised in praise that quickly turns to cries of "Crucify," the group walks into a kind of silence that feels sacred. And then, the first glimpse of Jerusalem appears, the golden stones glowing in the distance. For the disciples, it's a place of hope and triumph. For Jesus, it's a place of betrayal and death. But he doesn't turn away. He keeps walking. And as the city rises before them, so does the tension. We see it in the glances between disciples, in the murmurs exchanged in the night, and in Judas, who now lingers at the edge of every conversation, caught between devotion and desperation. He hears the whispers. He feels the eyes of the temple guards watching from a distance. And somewhere deep in his heart, a crack begins to form, small at first. But spreading. Season 6, Episode 1 doesn't just set the stage, it draws the battle lines. Faith versus fear, loyalty versus betrayal, truth versus power. And in the middle of it all, a carpenter from Nazareth who has never been more silent or more sure. His time has come, and nothing can stop what's coming next. There's a moment so quiet, so fragile that you almost miss it. Jesus, standing alone at night, staring out at Jerusalem. His face isn't angry, it's not afraid, it's grieved. Because he knows exactly what's coming. He knows the city won't accept him. He knows the people who cried Hosanna will soon scream "Crucify." And still, he stands there unshaken. But around him, the foundation is beginning to crack. Episode 1 doesn't show a dramatic collapse, shows a slow unraveling. 1,000 tiny moments of tension, hesitation, and fear that begin to eat away at the unity of the group. Peter, usually bold and unshakable, starts to question not just Jesus but himself. What if I'm not strong enough? He confesses in the dark. He remembers the promise, "On this rock I will build my church." But now that promise feels like a weight too heavy to carry. And when Jesus begins to speak about his death in more direct terms, the room falls into stunned silence. The idea of Jesus leaving dying feels impossible, and yet he speaks with a calm certainty that silences all objections. Matthew, the one who once relied on numbers and logic, begins to crumble under the weight of a truth he can't explain. He watches Jesus more closely now, writing less, feeling more. And as the group begins to prepare for the Passover, he senses that this year's celebration will be different, more solemn, more final. Even the preparations feel heavy, every word spoken, every dish passed, every footstep echoes with meaning. And in the middle of this sacred calm, Jesus looks at his disciples not just as followers, but as brothers, as friends, as the ones who will carry his message after he's gone. And that's when the heartbreak begins to show. John, the beloved, clings to every word like it's his last drink of water. His heart is soft, but it's breaking. James the Greater grows more restless, pacing in the evenings. And Thaddeus begins asking questions about what comes after, as if some part of him already knows the end is near. But the most chilling transformation is still happening in Judas. At first, it's just in his eyes. He avoids Jesus' gaze. Then, in his words, he becomes sharper, defensive, always pushing for answers. Why aren't we rising up? Why don't we strike while the crowds still adore you? But Jesus doesn't answer the way Judas wants. He speaks of surrender, of giving, not taking, of dying, not conquering. And that's when Judas begins to truly pull away. He still eats with them, sleeps near them, smiles when needed, but his heart, it's somewhere else. And that's what makes this moment so terrifying. Because betrayal doesn't start with a kiss. It starts with distance, with isolation, with silence. And Judas is now drowning in it. As Jesus continues to teach, to heal, and to love Evan, as he walks straight towards suffering, he never changes. He doesn't grow bitter. He doesn't beg. He doesn't turn back. Instead, he prepares his friends for what's coming, even as they refuse to see. He speaks of the kingdom, of what it really means to be great. He tells them they will suffer, that they will be hated, that they will be scattered. And still, they follow. Because somewhere deep inside, they still believe. even if they don't understand. But the city walls are closing in. The leaders have made their choice. The people are beginning to turn. The disciples can feel the ground shifting beneath their feet. And Jesus, he walks forward anyway into danger, into betrayal, into the final days that will change everything. Episode 1 isn't just the beginning of the end. It's the moment when hope and heartbreak collide. And what follows next will tear the world apart. Jerusalem is alive, but it's not the joyful city the disciples once imagined. It pulses with noise, fear, and watching eyes. Roman soldiers tighten their grip on the gates. Temple priests speak in urgent tones. Crowds gather not with faith, but with suspicion. Jesus' entry into the city isn't a triumph, it's a warning. The palms laid before him now feel like traps, and the cheers from the crowd carry an eerie tension, like a celebration before an execution, and deep down, the disciples feel it too. They look at each other, searching for strength in faces that only reflect their own fear. Something is wrong, terribly wrong, and no one knows how to stop it. Inside the temple, the fury boils over. The priests thought they could control the narrative. They thought Jesus would hide, or run, or fade into the crowd. But instead, he walks straight into the heart of their power and overturns it literally. Coins scatter, doves cry out, merchants shout, and Jesus, he stands in the chaos, his voice thundering through the stone walls. My Father's house is a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. It's not just a rebuke, it's a declaration of war. The religious elite are humiliated, and humiliation breeds hatred. In that moment, the decision is sealed. Jesus will die, not just to silence him, but to erase him. But even as the city conspires against him, Jesus continues to teach. In the courtyards, on the streets, in hidden homes, he speaks of the kingdom with urgency, with fire, with love that refuses to be extinguished. Parables sharpen like blades. His words cut through the lies he tells of vineyards and wicked tenants, of bridesmaids unprepared, of talents wasted and judgment coming. Every story is a mirror. Some look and repent. Others look and plot murder. But Jesus doesn't flinch. He knows who's listening. He knows who's waiting in the shadows. And he speaks anyway. The disciples watch with a mixture of awe and dread. They cling to his every word, but their eyes constantly shift to the crowd. The soldiers, the corners of the temple where whispers are exchanged and hands rest near weapons. It's no longer safe to walk the streets freely. Every alley could be a trap. Every knock at the door could mean arrest. And yet, he keeps going. Every morning, Jesus returns to the temple. Every evening, he leaves the city, finding shelter on the Mount of Olives or among friends in Bethany. But even those quiet nights are soaked in tension. The disciples don't sleep well. They dream of blood, of crosses, of shouting mobs. And in those dreams, one face always returns: Judas. Judas, who now disappears for hours. Judas, who flinches when Jesus speaks of loyalty and love. Judas, whose name still rests on everyone's lips with trust. For now, he is still one of them, still part of the circle, still breaking bread and bowing his head in prayer. But something is broken inside him. The weight of unmet expectations, the desire for control, the slow burn of disillusionment, all twisted into something dangerous. And when he walks into the high priest's chamber, when the silver is counted, when the deal is made, it doesn't feel like a victory. It feels like loss, like something sacred dying quietly in the dark. Yet, even as betrayal sharpens its blade, Jesus prepares his friends with patience that defies reason. He washes feet, he blesses children, he teaches truth. He knows the agony that awaits, but he carries it with grace because love demands it. The city may be ready to break. The leaders may be ready to strike. Judas may be ready to betray. But Jesus, he's ready to give everything. And when episode 1 ends, it won't be with a roar, it will end with a silence so heavy, so sacred, it will haunt every heart that's been watching. Night falls over Jerusalem, and the world holds its breath. The streets are quieter now, but the silence isn't peace. It's the hush before a storm. Inside the upper room, Jesus and his disciples gather for a final meal. The air is thick with meaning. Every glance, every movement, every word feels heavier than ever before. No one says it out loud, but they all feel it. This night is different. Something is ending, something holy, something terrifying. And Jesus, the teacher they've followed through miracles, storms, and miracles again, speaks with a clarity that cuts through their confusion like lightning. He breaks the bread, he lifts the cup. He tells them this is his body, his blood given. The disciples don't understand, not fully, but their souls tremble, because deep down, they know. He's preparing to leave them. Then he says the unthinkable. One of you will betray me. The words fall like a hammer, and the room erupts in chaos. Accusations fly, eyes dart, voices crack. Is it me? Each asks, desperate, afraid. And Judas. He stays still, he knows. Jesus knows. And yet, in that moment of unbearable tension, Jesus hands him the bread, a final act of grace, a final invitation to turn back. But Judas stands, his heart already closed, and steps into the night. The door shuts behind him, and the countdown begins. That moment is the quiet explosion at the center of episode 1. Not a scene of action, but of spiritual war, a war Judas has already lost. From that point, everything moves faster. Jesus leads his disciples into Gethsemane, a place of olive trees and agony. He falls to his knees, and the man who healed the sick and walked on water begins to sweat drops of blood. His humanity is fully on display now. Not the miracles, not the multitudes, just a man, alone, begging the Father for another way but still whispering, "Not my will, but yours be done." The disciples, unable to stay awake, fail to see the tears, the trembling hands, the sorrow that feels like death. And when they finally rise, rubbing the sleep from their eyes, it's already too late. Torchlight flickers in the distance. Footsteps echo through the trees, and at the front of the mob is Judas's face pale, his eyes hard, his mouth set in a line that no longer wavers. He steps forward, kisses Jesus on the cheek, and just like that, the betrayal is complete. But what makes this moment shatter? The heart isn't the arrest, it's Jesus' response. He doesn't fight, he doesn't flee. He calls Judas friend. A word spoken not in sarcasm, but in truth. Because Jesus never stopped loving him, not even now. Episode 1 of Season 6 ends, not with violence, but with surrender. The guards seize Jesus, the disciples scatter, and in that chilling final moment, as chains close around the hands that once raised the dead, the silence returns. The kind of silence that screams. The kind of silence that breaks hearts. Because now the end has truly begun. But this isn't defeat, it's destiny. The pain, the betrayal, the arrest dates, all part of the plan Jesus has spoken of since the very beginning. And even as darkness falls, one truth remains. Love is still in control, and the story is far from over.